Well, greetings world and greetings SevenSpot. It's time for another weekend blat. And today we've got a bunch of builders. Today we're going to talk about planning a 7 build. So the question I have is, are you thinking of doing a 7 build? Are you thinking of using an MX5 or anything else as the donor? Do you have a plan? Or are you considering an MX5 kit? There's loads of them out there. And what will it take to do the build? And what will it look like when you are done? How does the lyrics of that song go? Will I be pretty? Will I be rich? Well, we already know the answer to the second part, don't we?
Kit car, yeah.
Yeah. Que sera, sera. This show is going to feature lots of great advice from guys with loads of experience. But before we get started, do you like the work that we do at SevenSpot, the live stream, the documentaries, and the shop tours? If so, take a moment to smash that like button, subscribe, and share with your friends. It really helps the algo. Yeah, on today's show, we're going to do...
Well, so, yeah.
Quiet on the set, John, if you don't mind. On today's show, we're going to investigate the building from scratch, and to help us with that, we've got, of course, my show host, John Minion, to guide our conversation. Say hi, John.
Hiya, evening all, from Evesham, Midlands, UK.
All right. And Mike Rupp, believe, Mike, you're one of our show hosts, and you're going to be doing a webinar with us, and you're in the London area. Can you just chime in and say hi?
Yeah, hello, world.
All right.
I'm from sunny UK as well, sorry. Looks like today everyone is from UK apart from you, isn't it?
Could be. We're going to find that out. And there's more. Are you planning to do a scratch or low-cost build with an MX5 donor to speak to this topic,
no,
please?
I go a little bit a different route. Not MX5 build. I started with a cross-flow Type 3 Ford gearbox, Ford rear axle, so the rather classic approach.
Good. Mike, I'm going to lead into the next guest, and we'll get right back to you. How's that?
Sure.
So if you're planning to build something from an MX5 donor, and this is a scratch build, we're going to bring in somebody from North America, actually not far from me, in a rich, beautiful Delta, BC. My good friend, Mike Machin. You want to just say hi, Mike?
Hey, how are you guys? And it's Richmond. We don't cross that bridge into Delta.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for
south of the river.
Okay, great. And what about if you're building an MX5, or if you want to build an MX5 from a skateboard? Today we've got MEV Exoset builder Rob Goddard with us. Say hi, Rob.
Hi. Slightly wrong there. Quantum sports cars.
Oh, we're going to get to you too.
Don't worry. Wrong Rob. We said we'd have trouble with too many Robs.
Yeah, Rob.
Rob, this is Rob Goddard from MEV. He's involved with MEV. Say hi, Rob.
Yeah. Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. And now that we mentioned it, thinking of a skateboard with fantastic plastic,
Rob,
today we we've got Replicar builder Supreme all the way from Yorkshire, Gary Tortoff. Say hi,
Gary. Everyone.
All right,
hi,
cheers.
Folks. I am from Yorkshire, but I actually now live in the wonderful Derbyshire Peak Districts near the Blue John Mines in the UK.
Perfect.
Lovely part of the country. Yeah, I was born in Derby. Love it.
All right. And getting on to the quantum question, joining us today with regard to the LMR 141 at Quantum, we're blessed to have Rob Hancock and Peter Holder, who love cameras, don't you?
Well, Pete's okay with them. I hate them with a vengeance. Hi, all.
Now's your time to talk, Rob. Hi, everybody.
Well, this is fabulous. Now, to guide this conversation, we're going on and going to have a look at the kind of builds that you guys are doing and what brought you there. But what spurred me on to have this show is last week we entered the twilight zone, it seems like, because we were talking about kit cars from the ancient past, and we were talking about the Dutton Phaeton. And it occurred to me that we could have a conversation about, what will it look like? Will it be a classic MX5 donor with a Phaeton-style space frame? Will it be a skateboard? What will the body look like? And will it be a body on subframe, or will it be a flow-on exo? Does anybody have a clue? I don't.
Not a clue. Not a clue. Anybody else?
No.
Well, I know what it would like with an exoskeleton on it.
Well,
Yeah.
John has got a little something he's going to show us.
Yeah, we did a piece on Dutton, and obviously Tim's. Well, I say he's been out of the kit car industry. He hasn't really, because he's always been in it, and he did a lot of consultancy work. So yeah, he's now coming in, and his announcement that was on the 24th of July that he is going back into kit car manufacturing. It's going to be based on the Phaeton 4, which I think that was left back in 1989. It's going to be called the Phaeton 5. Based on an MX5, it's going to be 4 inches wider than the old S4, which should give an extra 7-inch cockpit width each side, extra 6-inch leg room. So, yeah, I mean, again, one of the main criteria here, and we are talking about MX5s, the main criteria here was to use everything from the MX5 and base it, similar to like he based the Surf and the Reef on, it's basically just to keep costs down. So yeah, really looking forward to it. I mean, there's a few pictures here of the kit cars that he went through restoration, because he kind of dropped out the kit car manufacturing thing, but then went into restoring Duttons and bringing those back in. He still holds a world record as well, which I will just mention briefly. I want to keep it quite short. But this is one of my favourite pictures of him crossing the channel in a Dutton Commander. And the world record is he crossed it with 2 Dutton Commanders. Still got it, and that was back in 1986. So nobody else has actually managed to do anything more on that. We've still got the record there. So it's going to be interesting. I don't know what it's going to look like. As I say, it's going to be MX5 based, and hopefully we'll be launched at the Newark Kit Car Show. So really looking forward to it.
Well, let's just jump into the conversation, being that we're talking about scratch building, and I'm just going to bring Mike into the conversation a bit. Mike Rupp, that is. So, Mike, you're building a scratch build, but yours is a bit different, isn't it? Yours is you're taking over somebody else's mistake, aren't you?
Yeah, that's correct. So the previous owner started to build his car based on the first book, which came out, the Ron Champion one. He would use the rotary engine from a Mazda, and I think also the gearbox and the rear differential. So I took over, and I'm using basically, as per book, the Cortina components.
Okay, yeah.
So basically, the reason why we're here is we're talking about the MX5 build, but believe me, there are still people building scratch builds with all kinds of different powertrains. And so if you're thinking of MX5 and you want to do it using the low-cost method, tune in to our webinar that Mike will be hosting with Dave Lassell on the 18th, and we'll have a nice discussion about it.
Because Dave Lassell is doing something completely different, but I'm not going to spoil it. Just tune in, and but he's gone a completely different route, and he probably wishes he hadn't gone down that route, but now he's so far into it, he's just got to do it anyway. Yeah,
and the whole thing is, Dave couldn't be here today, but he does have some MX5 components in his, and that's as much as we'll say. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Could I throw a question into the ring?
Absolutely.
And I will introduce myself, as you skipped over me at the intro, Jim. But
my apologies.
I've done nothing for SevenSpot. Don't worry about it.
Well, you were not. You actually, to be quite candid, I just tossed you into the agenda, and I didn't even hand you on my show notes.
Yeah, it's not the first time that's happened with me. Just a quick question, and probably maybe someone like Rob Hancock is the person who would have a good opinion on this. If you didn't use an MX5, what would you use?
Modern day, you're limited. Everything's gone to canvas, so you've got an electrical nightmare. Really, MX5's the one. Certainly for the next 10 years, I think, plus.
What about the small BMW, the 1 Series?
Still on canvas, so you can't take the whole loom in everything, or you're going to struggle to take the loom across.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's just the parts bin, isn't
years
it?
ago, and I was advised against it because a friend of mine who's an electrics wizard said you'll put it all together and it won't start, and you'll never find out why it won't start.
Can I ask Gary Tordiff to speak to that particular point? Because Gary has been doing the Replicar, and I'm just going to throw Gary's Replicar up here, and just you can comment on that, because before the show you were just talking about that exact same point. You built a Replicar, and yours has the MX5, but we had a discussion about doing the electrics on that. Can you just elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, many years ago, when I used to race mechanic, it was all pre-electronics, so setting up Webers and things like that I could do no problem, and the standard wiring loop. Then when it came to getting the Mazda and stripping it down, I don't know if it's the right phrase, but I was horrified. Starting to strip that many sensors, so I actually labelled everything. You can't begin to imagine how much masking tape I used and wrote everything on. And it worked, but what I've done is on mine, I've taken out the ABS. So, of course, that part of the system isn't working. There's no windscreen wipers. There's basically nothing other than just the Replica and Exocet are probably very, very similar. So what I've found is by labeling everything, I only had 2 errors. One wasn't an error, that was the fuel pump failed, and it's like a lot of things. When you find out what it is at the end, you find out what the telltale symptoms are. But I didn't know. So, for example, the pump started. It became more and more difficult to crank the car, and then it just wouldn't crank. And I thought I'd got an electrical problem, and I was just about to strip everything down, relays and everything. And I had one of those moments where I was sat at night thinking everything through, and I did quite a lot of that, which is why it's taken so long to build. And I thought I'll put a direct feed to the fuel pump from the battery and see if I hear anything. I heard nothing. So this is where
it's a fuel pump. Yeah.
So, but the interesting thing on a Replicar is you cannot get to the fuel pump with the body on. So I had to take the body off again. So that was one problem. But the other problem, which might make people smile, is the 2 connector blocks for the rear lights are exactly the same, even though they're on different sides of the car. When you have a Replica, all your wiring goes down one side. And I thought I'd labeled. So I thought I'd labelled everything correctly, and I'd got the blocks intertwined. So when I put the rear lights on, I got indicator working on the wrong side, didn't realise. But the reason I mentioned that is I then came to connect up the rear fogs. No rear fogs, nothing worked. And again, another moment of sitting, thinking about things. I suddenly thought, well, hang on a minute. I wonder if I've got the blocks transposed. That's exactly what I'd done. So, but what I had noticed was in a lot of instances on the MX5, the connector blocks are slightly different. So you can, on some things, if you lose your tapes or your notes, it doesn't matter. But as I say, I absolutely labelled everything. And what I've redone it, when I've put the car together, I got myself a proper printer, the proper labeler, and I've done it again. So if I do need to take anything to bits, I can find everything. And touch wood, everything works now. Lights, the lot, everything works. So all's good.
With all the sensors on these, like the Mazdas and the new cars and blah, 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 if you get any error codes on any sensor, do you need an ODBC reader or something to plug in to work out what it is, or it's just a matter of elimination?
Is that to me? I mean, I've been
just throwing it out there. Yeah.
I've been and bought myself an iCar Soft, but I'll be honest with you, I bought that for one of my other cars, and I bought it because I wanted something that would do all the cars I've got. And because because I've got a 98 MB, I can plug in, but I'll get so many error codes because I've got no ABS. I've got all the things that I don't use anymore. Throw out codes.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting. I'm going to bring Mike Machen into the screen now, because good question. How are you at that stage yet now, Mike? Where you're getting into the wiring thing?
Oh yeah. Like I say, I think it was 27 miles of wire in those things when you start wrecking the old donor car. But what I did is I got the Mazda Miata wiring diagrams. So I got the whole printout. There's like 33 pages, and page 8 and 9, it's called engine performance circuitry. And so I've just copied those 2 pages, and of course I'm half blind, so I blew them up to blueprint size, 2 foot by 3 foot, glued everything together. It's now hanging on the wall, and basically everything like taillights, headlights, anything that's in there, I've thrown that all away, and all I'm focusing on is getting the engine running. I've got no OBD access or any of that type of stuff. So I guess it's going to be stay tuned. But I figured if we eliminate all the other stuff and totally wire it independent and just stay with the engine itself,
the engine management system. Yeah, that should work.
And then you plug that into the computer. But also over here, there's an outfit that sells a harness to the with a 1.8 engine, and you can buy this harness, and they've already stripped everything and threw it all away, and it's purely for the engine. And
is that the guys in Colorado?
I don't know specifically where they are. I just talked to other hot rodders and where they've been. But then I heard another comment off of the one fellow there about the fuel pump. So if you can't see it, I haven't sent the latest picture, but now I've got all the holes drilled and I've got the gauges mounted. I got a bunch of toggle switches, but a thing like the fuel pump, it's going to be on its own fuse circuit on a toggle switch. And when I climb in the car, I just flick a switch and listen to the racket that the fuel pump makes until it builds up the pressure, and then
until it primes itself. Yeah.
So I'm getting rid of all of that, all of the peripheral wiring that they've got, and just staying as raw bone as I can.
Yeah. Makes sense. Tell you that the whole wiring thing just horrifies me.
It's a nightmare, all the amount of wires in there that are there, because you got a thing on the clutch that if you step on the clutch, a switch activates and it forces the engine down. The computer forces the engine down to an idle and all that type of stuff. Well,
I want to cry. Don't talk anymore.
Can I throw one in here, because it was sort of part of the answer to this, and it's probably again for Rob or Peter, that the thing is coming out seems to be the obstacle to building at the moment is not so much the mechanicals, it's the electricals. And with so many based on the MX5, is there not a market for someone to come up with a loom that's a simplistic replacement one? Because whether it's I don't want to upset Rob or Peter by mentioning other brands, but if it's an LMR or it's a low MK low cost, or it's an Exocet, effectively you've got lights in all 4 corners, you've got an engine at the front, you've got a dash somewhere behind the driver. If you can connect all those things with a simple loom, is there the potential for someone to come up with that solution?
Well, I think down south, Painless makes them. You can get them. Like my previous like when I built my Cobra kit car, that's what I did. I just phoned them up and said, I want one. And they said, what's your motor type? So I told them. So they asked me 101 questions. And a month later, I got a wiring harness that I just put in and connected everything. It was every 6 inches, it said left turn signal, front, all that. And you wired it up and plugged it in. And so, and I understand that there is somebody somewhere making a loom specifically just to the 1.8 engine. They've eliminated all the headlight switches, all that other peripheral stuff, right?
Just to run the engine, basically, and everything else can come after. Yeah.
See, and that's what I'm doing. Is I'm at the point now. I just mocked everything up. It looks like a mess, right? And but where I am now, I'm getting to the point. I just want to be able, when I go in and turn the key on and hit my start button, I want that engine to run. That's because if you can't get it to do that, you're in trouble.
Yeah, Mike's got a low threshold for frustration with regard to wiring.
You'd look funny going down the road with 4 friends pushing, they yelling, going faster, 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 right? But
yeah,
it's the normal here.
Yeah. Can I'm going to bring in Rob. Go ahead.
Yeah, our next
Rob.
stage is to take a rolling chassis to Simtech, who are going to make us a custom loom.
There's two main ones, Simtech, Premier Wiring as well.
Premier Wiring still going?
Yeah.
Oh,
as far as I believe, yeah.
Because we used to use them years ago. But they moved off to Spain.
I didn't know that. But both
I thought he was in Scotland.
I think he's in Scotland. I thought he was in Scotland.
He was in Spain.
That's near Spain.
Yeah, well, it is. It's slightly cold. probably raining.
Thank you,
now.
Peter.
They both start with an S.
One has the summer. Yeah, one has the summer. The other one doesn't, though.
It's next weekend.
Before we move off down this road of bespoke looms, it's worth mentioning as well that on my kit, the reason I kept the loom was specifically I wanted to keep the plug and play dashboard. So although the dashboard in my car doesn't look like an MX5 dashboard, it is. I kept the pod, so I've only got the plugs in the back, and I just wanted to make sure that I could just connect everything. When I started building mine, the guy who got the one before me, a chap who did live in Wales, but I think he now lives in the States, John Thompson, he built one. And John made his own loom because I think that was his background. So as I said, I went through that pain of, do I want to use the MX5 dashboard or do I want to do something different? It was a mistake deciding to use the MX5 dashboard for a whole host of reasons that I'll probably talk about later. But that's what I did. So I didn't want to change anything. I just wanted to be able to plug and play, unaware of the fact that there are certain bits of the system, indicators, that on my car, if your dashboard is not plugged in, your indicators will not work. And the other thing I just wanted to mention while everybody's talking about wiring looms, I bought a 98 early NB, and only discovered after I'd bought it that it has that for a period of about 3 months, there is a different wiring loom to the ones that went before and the ones that came after. And it took me, I actually got the loom from a guy in the States, sent me the wiring diagram. So if anybody's buying a donor, they need to be really careful that they get something that they get. Yeah. So mine was at UK 98 UK NB, and the wiring diagram that there's online that you can go and get. It's not the same.
Wow.
So
very cool. I'm just going to throw you into this conversation, Rob, because you've gone down the MX5 route, but a different direction. It's the EXO route. I mean, have you run into the same situation with your wiring?
So with my wiring, I was a little bit dubious about cutting it about. I had very, very many nightmares about cutting the wiring about. But a friend of mine who's really good with auto electrics was like, no, we'll be fine. Don't worry. So what we did is when we got to pretty much the stage where the photo is now, where we had, the frame on and a few other bits and pieces, what we did was we just laid the original MX5 wiring loom over the car.
Just as it was, Just as it was,
Did you splice?
No. At this point, all we did was plugged it all in, so we could get the car running. And then got the car running, and then we obviously found out what was the wiring loom bit for the lights and other bits and pieces, and bundled those up together. And then we found obviously what the heating one was, and then just started with what we did is we kind of chopped a bit out.
Yeah.
Of
Checked
wire.
it still works. Checked it still
Checked
works. Yeah.
Exactly
That's
that.
just
Checked
elevation.
everything worked, and then just kept chopping. And then when we
Yeah.
got down to the whole car works, everything was fine. What we've left with is just really loads of long wires. We then just started shortening those wires and rejoining them. So
That's
then we made our own bespoke wiring loom. As you can see there on that picture, it still looks like Spaghetti Junction and horrible.
Yeah,
But
no,
that's not a bad way of doing it. Just reverse engineering.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
we were just
Sounds
as
so
we went
easy.
because it wasn't. I hated it. but to be honest, the way that we did it was probably the best way of doing it. If I've got any advice for anyone that's planning to do it, make sure when you're taking your donor vehicle apart, make sure that you tape and note where every single wire or every single connection block or anything like that, where that went to. So if you knew that it was a rear heater screen or for the heater itself, so you just don't get lost. And even maybe make yourself up a spreadsheet with numbers that then correspond with maybe the numbers that you've put on your bits of masking tape or whatever you've decided to mark your wiring loom up with, because it makes life a darn sight easier.
Yeah.
Wow.
And with some of the lighting, we redid some of the wiring from that, and obviously we removed a load of other wiring that on the donor vehicle that had been butchered quite a bit. So we removed all of that and replaced it, and and then some of the wiring we put new in for like the lights and stuff like that, and then obviously had to sort hyperblink for the LED lights as well.
Yeah. I think for anybody out there, I mean, it's not to get too scared by the wiring. Let's not put a big negative on this.
People,
there are people that can help, and if wiring is not your strong suit, it certainly isn't mine. I would just ask somebody, can you give me a hand with this? My wiring skills are still not brilliant now, but you're right with the keeping certain clocks. I've got a bike engine, and we've still got the bike clock. So if any sensors are going to throw an error code, I can go in a diag mode and see what all the sensors are reading. So that was quite important for me, because with my wiring skills, if something went wrong, I wouldn't have a clue. I wouldn't know where to start. But yeah, don't get too heartened with the wiring side of things, because there are a lot of people there that can help.
There's on our page, our Facebook page for MX5 there's a load of people on there that will give you all the help that you ever need if you ever got stuck with an MX5. They're all very, very helpful. Everyone just wants to see another car on the road, at the end of the day.
Exactly.
That's what we all want, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they're all so, there's a ton of help, and there's even people that would not only explain to you or maybe send you diagrams or pictures of their cars. Some people will even go, well, I'm quite close to you, I'll come over.
I'll pop in and give you a hand. We've got a guy. I won't give his name or which group. We've got a guy in one of our other groups that we're on. He's not an electrician by trade, but he knows his stuff. And he has wired so many of our members' cars. Or if you've got a problem, drop him a note. He said, "Well, check this, check that." And if not, he'll pop. As you say, the members will pop round, have a look at it, give you a hand. He's rewired some of our members' cars, not wholly, but certainly in certain areas. He'll do it within a day and get everything absolutely spot on. So don't get too. This is what I say. Don't get too het about the wire. If it's not your bag, just go and ask for help.
Could I just jump in? Yeah. So I was going to ask, just to go back half a step, Rob, this wiring loom you're having made, is that a one-off, or are you planning to productionize that?
No, we're going to try and offer it as an option. Of course, the standard loom will still plug in.
Right. Okay. So that could be quite an option, not just for LMR builders. It could be, XSX, MKs, and
absolutely. I mean, obviously, we've got to make it custom made to fit our bodywork with the lights in the right places, and so the least joints, the better.
And it's not just the LMR that'll fit. You've got your other models, MX5 models that'll be designed to work with as well, right?
The Replicar as well, because it runs the same chassis.
Yeah.
It's only as an option. I mean, they're quite expensive. And the Replicar and the LMR is still a budget kit. So it's what we don't want to do is it's a budget kit, but you've got to spend another 20 grand on bits.
Yeah.
The whole idea of this is you can unbolt everything out of the MX5, including the loom, untouched, and bolt it in. And yes, there's going to be a lot of wires there spare that you don't need and aren't doing anything, but it will work by doing that.
Exactly.
But but I think the other big thing is, I would say, even if it's not an upfront option that people take up, it always, going back to when we were like 4 Pinto engines with sort of just the coil and the distributor, electrics were always.
You've got about 3 wires in them, haven't you?
Well, I couldn't do that then either.
Exactly, nor could I. But going back to then, it was always the electrics that always seemed to be the frightening thing. So if you can come up with something that makes it simpler, even if people have to invest a little bit, I think that's a great option. I appreciate what you're trying to do there, Rob, and I think it's really great with the LMR, keeping it down at the budget end. But
today's market, you've got to offer it. It's the days of, and that's what we've worked hard for with the LMR, and we'll move on to the Replicar and put the same things in, is to make it easy to build and not have to. I'm not going to use the term fudge, even though I just did. No. But there's certain things that you have to do on a kit car to compromise, and if you can avoid that, I think you're onto a winner.
Yeah, Jim's just jumped in there. We're bringing up your
one of those.
Yeah, Jim's just jumped
I can see that.
in there and brought in your website. He jumped the gun because I've got it ready to go. But Jim, so I'm sadly lucky. So talk us through the LMR.
Okay, where do I start? Obviously, we bought the Replicar from ANC. We made the last, I think, 19 bodies for him, so it seemed the obvious thing to do. A couple of little bits on the chassis I thought needed improving. A race car engineer has already said it was already a really good chassis, and I've made it better, which is perfect for me to hear. The body shape, we'd already started with Andy, if I'm honest. We were going into Andy's once a month and putting a tin of filler on and rubbing it back off. Yeah. And when I took it on, I took the whole thing on and then changed it to where I wanted it instead of Andy. So
you've shortened the body by about 15 inches, was it?
No, it's about 8.
About 8 inches.
About 8 inches shorter, and it's about 8 inches narrower.
Okay, yeah.
No more six-cylinder inserts.
Well, the 6-cylinder won't fit in the Replicar either. You can land aircraft on it.
Before we move off the topic of the 6-cylinder, you can get you can put the V6 in. You can put the Mazda V6
can go in, and you can get a V8 in.
Well, I wouldn't like to try.
Well, the trouble is, I love V8. So although the Mazda is probably the best donor car I've ever come across in sort of 30 years in the industry, they are just superb as a donor.
And they're so cheap. So cheap these days.
They just work. Everything works.
Yeah.
And I think you could spoil that by putting a V8 in it, but they just sound so good.
Yeah.
So at some point, and I've got a TVR engine sat on the shop floor, so I'm going to have to do it because it's me.
Yeah. Why is that not a surprise?
Thanks, Trev.
I'm most interested. Can I just jump in here, guys? Because one of the part of the discussion is, we're talking about scratch builds, and now we've migrated down to the wiring issue that everybody's horrified about. But not Mike Rupp, because you don't have the wiring issue to deal with because yours is all old school, isn't it? What engine are you using in yours?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, I use a crossflow. I'm still worried about the wiring because I haven't done an awful lot of wiring in my life. The only time when I setup of wiring was for a single-seater race car, which had no alternator and only one rain light. It worked, but getting something built which should pass the IVA is at this moment quite frightening.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you've gone from 8 wire. You've gone from 4 wires to 8.
Yeah, pretty much.
There's still room for old school when you're building a low cost, is all I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So but getting back to the whole MX5 and I call it fantastic plastic on a skateboard with regard to the LMR 141. I mean, you're using the skateboard, but how difficult is it to attach the body to that, Rob?
Drop straight on. We've got our space frame chassis that fits on, and then the body just drops straight over.
Yeah,
Jim. So just to interrupt you, Jim. You know when I did my little bit, you did a picture of my son sat in my car.
Yeah.
If you can find that, Rob, and then all that happens is the body just because you still use the same chassis, don't you, Rob?
It's very similar. We've added a few laser cuts, a bit, but yeah, the dimensions are exactly the same.
Yeah.
Is a skateboard a body style? Because out here in Richmond, a skateboard is what kids are roaring around with electric motors on. Stand on them with a hand.
Well, I think the correct term is PPF. Yeah, we always call it a skate as well because that's exactly what it looks like. It's a backbone with 2 subframes each end.
2 subframes,
or subframe each end.
4 wheels, one at each corner. Yeah,
that's the one. Yeah.
Well, for prospective builders along that thought line is how long did it take you, Rob Goddard, and you, Rob Hancock, the 2 Robs, can comment on what type of time frame it takes to strip down your MX5 to get it ready to roll, to turn it into a roller?
Mine.
Well,
I've got a problem with buying tools. So I've got a forklift and lots of cutting gear, so about a half a day. And then wheeled out on the forklift and straight onto the back of the scrap van.
Yeah.
Then phoned him the following day to see if he's still got the bits I'd left on that I needed. But no, that's the worst part of the job. But it's compared to stripping Sierras and Fiestas and things, they're a doddle.
Yeah.
So for me, I took a little bit longer than a day. And my problem was space, as that was in a single garage. So I probably took about 6 months, I suppose, to get down to roller skate, I suppose. That was mainly because I took parts off the car and then they had to go back inside the shell of the car until I sold them on or, was able to scrap them or whatever. So that was my problem. So yeah, probably about 6 months for me. And that wasn't full time on it. It was maybe 4 or 5 hours on a Saturday occasionally,
Yeah. But you built yours. You built yours in a single garage as well, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Actually, 3 single garages because it's moved twice.
Yeah. You can build these things in a single garage. Yeah.
You can.
Oh, you can. The question I've got for all of you, it being that you're talking about MX5s, is how much did you have to bribe the wife with regard to having the skeletal remains of an MX5 in your front yard before it was taken away?
Sat on the driveway, yeah.
The comment was, and how long is that going to be out there making the house look like a junkyard?
Everybody's smiling and nervously as we ask the question.
I'm sorry, but I've got a story that I'll outdo it, and I'll make it really brief. When I was doing the Firefly, I was cutting up Fiat Pandas on the drive, and the neighbour loved it because her husband had left her, and he was trying to sell a house from under her. And she basically said the worse you can make it look, the less chance that someone's going to buy it. So that was like a free license. So that was brilliant. So eventually, the husband gave up and she stayed there until the kids were 18. So that was a winner.
Brilliant. Yeah. You got to grind away on the drive, making a mess until about 11 o'clock at night, just in case people pop by. Brilliant.
And
Brilliant.
she was probably telling everybody that good old Trevor next door is an axe murderer.
Still does.
Yeah. We've got
I've got a good question there, Jim.
Go for it, Trevor.
I got a question coming in from somebody, and he's not put his name, but what's the best MX5 donor to go for? Because I also believe the later ones, is it the 6-speed box they had? And the later ones had limited slip on the rear, limited slip diff?
Right, you can get, so the Mark II, you could get a Mark II with a 6-speed box and a limited slip diff, which is a limited edition car. I went and looked at quite a few donors. I didn't go with the 6-speed or the LSD for a couple of reasons. One was thinking if I need parts in the future, the 6-speed box is, well, it was when I was looking, quite rare. So I wanted to make sure I could get parts. And I saw no point in having a slippy diff, if I'm honest, for what I'm using the car for. So I selected what I used based on what I was going to use the car for. If I was going to track it, then probably I would have looked at limited slip diff. But the gear ratios, I have a 6-speed in my Boxster, and I don't need 6 gears. It was one of those. Why do I need it? I don't think you need it in an MX5.
Yeah.
So what?
I thought I saw. Go on. I was going to say we had a previous question pop up from that Brummy with the MIDI fetish. I can't remember what it was though.
I'm just looking. Was it that one about the?
There it is.
Engine? Yeah.
It's with the Vauxhall engine.
Oh, okay. Sorry, that wasn't the full question. I'll shut up.
No worries. That's why you're here, Trevor. So the question always comes up, and just myself included, in doing a build, and what surprises that you try to make a game plan. You got your whiteboard out and you're knocking them off. What surprises that you did not anticipate did you come up with in your individual build? Starting with Rob Goddard, what happened that you didn't think about?
I try to plan as best as you can. I think it was more along the lines of, with my build, I always thought I was going to do a complete budget build, and maybe later on when funds allowed, I would then maybe update and uprate the things that I hadn't done. But I suppose really the shock was that I ended up spending more money than I thought I was going to. But
everybody nods.
I think really what I did is I used man maths. That's what I'm telling myself up here. So I could actually physically do the build, but then that ran out of control and went over double I originally thought. But surprises, not many really huge surprises for me. Nothing that really shocked me to stop. There was a couple of head scratching moments, but where you just get a little bit lost and a bit wayward, but your mate just gives you a slap and says, "Come on, hurry up, let's get done." So nothing really shocked me. It was just just all I would say is just try and plan your build and do as much searching about the build that you're going to be doing as much as you can, and try and get as much information as you can about your build before you start building, so you don't have those, "Oh, I didn't know about that part that you needed to buy," or whatever,
Yeah.
And with regard to scratch, backcountry, we're talking about Paul.
So I was trying to communicate quietly with Paul, so because he can't even spell black country.
Mike Rupp,
you can't understand. Yeah, you can't understand him when he speaks, and you can't even understand him when he types.
I've got nothing to say. I can't type or spell.
No, I'm terrible.
Trying to put the thing back on the rails, Mike Rupp. When your build is a completely different thing, because yours is not only a scratch build, it's somebody else's mistake. So what kind of unforeseen issues have you come up with so far?
I was going to say, I wouldn't say a mistake. I
would not say it was a mistake.
No.
He just gave up in the beginning of the build.
Yeah.
He said he got too many cars, and when I picked up the chassis, there were lots of Honda Preludes. He got lots of projects, and he just decided to not go ahead. On my build, because I did it now, or I decided to do it differently, I found out that my rear axle suddenly doesn't fit, so I had to make the rear part of the tunnel wider. Today I actually found out I got another prop shaft, and I found out that they are on the Ford Type 3 gearbox. There are different output shafts. They all have the same, the seal has all the same diameter, but the spline doesn't fit. So I need to look into that. I'm pretty sure there will be much more to come up. But what I'm saying, or what I try to put to a new builder, or to the prospect new builder, as Rob already said, take your time, do lots of research. If you buy someone else's project, make sure it's built by the book. Or if it's not built by the book, make sure you can amend it and you're willing to do that extra work. Because very often you invest lots of time, lots of extra time, which is not planned. And sometimes it's just easier to build the chassis from the scratch, how you want it, rather than taking on someone else's project. But however, saying that, at the moment I can see on eBay lots of cheap projects, which perhaps is also, or might be interesting for the prospect future builder.
Mm-hmm. Well, moving on to Mike Machen, but I know you're building from scratch. Did you run into any hiccups?
The biggest problem I had was I got so much bloody junk in my garage was space. So once I figured it all out, I just phoned the boys up that deliver those big steel containers, and I had a 10 by 10 container hauled in and dropped at my front door. I just took everything out of my shop that I really didn't need. Mm-hmm. And then I built my table, because a friend there, Ed Leach, had said, hey, when you build a table, make it at least 11 feet long and 4 feet wide and up to a comfortable height. Yeah. So that was my biggest concern, was space. So I just And the other thing is, thank God there's pension checks coming in every month, because I just keep spending it. Hey, I built a Cobra kit car, restored motorhomes. I've done all that. And what I learned was, it's going to cost you a lot of money. And if you decide to sell it, you're not going to get money back. Right. So it's just, the sport of taking a project, building something, and everybody going, man, I like that. Yeah. That's the big plus right there. But you know, and tools. I find out
tools.
You need a tool, and you need a specialty tool. The hard part is finding out what, like an example, the Zeus. If you use Zeus connectors, there's a tool, and the guy in the video kept talking about a squash wrench. Couldn't find it. I was on a bunch of buddies sitting around. The guy said, what about flat rivets? Well, guess what popped up was the tool I needed, and it's called a squeeze tool, not a squash tool. But I would safely say I bought $1,500 worth of specialty tools for what I want to do, because to try and find somebody else to do a job for you, everybody's into, it's money, right? You know, so you can buy the tools, you can buy the parts, and first thing I suggest is get a piece of scrap metal and test it first, because guaranteed if you try it without doing a test panel, you're going to screw something up that's going to cost you money. So it's kind of like, do a test panel, burn up a part of your product, then put it in the car. Because me and Ed are building a gas tank. I just drilled a 2-inch hole in there, and then I went to put the fitting in. The fitting is 1 3/4 inches. So now we got to modify it. Things like that. So,
I think this is where the groups also come in, an absolutely brilliant source, because we've got a lot of members that will lend people tools. So if you haven't got an engine crane, if you haven't got a flywheel puller, if you haven't got this, if you haven't got that, pop a note up and people say, yeah, I've got one, or I could. Do you need to weld in or whatever? But that's where groups are so important, I think.
Just great, and all you have to do is go to Scotland, pick it up.
Yeah. There's a lot of water between you guys and us guys, so it's but that's true. Like once you got the tools, I mean, all the guys know I got tools, so yeah, you can borrow it. And the standing rule is if you borrow the tool and you screw it up or you break it, well, I guess you buy a new one. That's kind of the code of jobbers, right? With doing projects. Well, it's money. It's a hole in the ground. You're going to fire a whole bunch of money into.
Yeah, and on that particular point, go for it.
Yeah, no. Just the reward is that you've got a big thing. My buddies are always on my ass all the time because I don't take pictures. So I've starting to learn to take pictures because it's kind of nice to see the progression. But it's very nice at the end when, there's nothing more exciting to an old guy when you hit that start button and that engine flashes, right? It's better than sex, for Christ's sake. So that's our age.
As long as
heard that one.
Yeah,
Gary,
as long as it doesn't crash and burn.
Yeah,
I just heard the door slam behind me, so I think she heard that one.
Gary Tartup, what hiccups and surprises did you find in your 13-year build?
So the quantum guys will know that the original MEV Replicar was, and I think it's part of Stuart's philosophy, the way he does things. He leaves you problems to sort out yourself. So a lot of the build early doors was trying to make things fit. And an example that it's fairly easy to resolve, but got me scratching my head a bit, was the original chassis made for a Series 1 NA, and the middle silencer box on an NA is a cylinder. The middle silencer box on an NB is an oval. Exactly. So my first solution was to warm up the middle box and bash it with a hammer. But I'm a bit of a perfectionist. So it cleared the chassis, and I thought, I don't like that. So that's
Rob Hancock's nodding there. So yeah, been there, done that. Yeah.
So now it's a straight through pipe, and I've just got the MX5 box at the back. But the other thing that anybody who stripped an MX5, let's see who smiles. Do not try to take out the rear PPF bolts.
Cut them off.
I going back to talking about, because my build is my work. It's a building which I call my workshop. It's just a building. It's 8 miles away, so I have to travel with all my tools and everything to do anything, and then come back. So I do full days. It took me 6 weeks, going 1 day a week, to get the PPF bolt out of the back. And if you know how it's fixed in, there's 3 different types of metal, so you get complete welded. What is it? Corrosive welding. I should have cut it off from the start, but I'd ground it off so badly I couldn't get to anything to cut off. And in trying to do it, I actually shattered. There's a small casting spacer, and I shattered that when I was trying to get it off. And you can't buy them. You cannot buy them. So long story short, I found a guy who got a reconditioned rear axle that he had to sell. So I went to buy it, and I said to him, I only want the small casting. And he said, you've got to take the whole thing because the wife says it's got to go out the garage. So I bought I did buy the old axle thinking it was second hand, and when I got it back, it had been totally reconditioned. So now for 50 quid has gone on the car.
So it's got in. Yeah.
And then the other thing, when buying a kit, I made the fatal mistake of I had a bit of cash at the front end, so I thought, I'm going to buy high performance shocks, fully adjustable shocks. That might be fine on an Exocet. It's no good on a Replicar because the Gas Gold Pros that I bought reduced the ride height by 1 inch. Well, you're already struggling with a Replicar to meet IVA requirements. So the Gas Gold Pros are now in a box in the back of the garage, and I reconditioned the springs and bought new shocks to try and get the height back up to something like. And then the other thing that's a bit weird on the using all the MX5 parts on the Replicar is to make the car look right, you need a bigger rolling diameter wheel and tire.
Make it look period.
But the speedo and the output from the gearbox is set up for low profile 15-inch.
Exactly. So no chance. Yeah.
So I don't know if the quantum guys know what Stuart Mills' solution was.
Take the needle off
and it
move
wasn't.
It.
What's that,
That's
Rob?
the one. So,
what was the solution, Rob Hancock?
Take the needle off and move it around.
On the speedo. So you take the needle off, move it, and then put it back on again. I have found out, and it would be useful for many of you guys if you know this. I didn't realise you can get the outputs. You can get the outputs from the gearbox a different colour for the MX5s to change the ratios, but I don't know which way to go. And there's somebody, I don't know whether you buy it from Mazda, but there's a guy in Australia doing it.
So I had, mine was a Mark 1, and I got a Mark 2 one from a place called Suffolk Mazda that were in Ipswich, and just replaced that, and mine's been fine. And I've just set up I've just set up all my, because I've got an A-swell on my one, so I just had to set up all my rotation and obviously tyre size and everything like that. And when I went through my IVA, my speedo setting was spot on.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Why didn't you just go GPS? I put a GPS speedo in mine.
Don't think illegal.
That solves all the problems.
Yeah, 17 years ago that wasn't an option for me, but yeah.
I don't think GPS illegal for IVA in the UK.
Not for IVA.
No.
IVA.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They fly jets, $1 million jets with it, but it's not allowed.
Well, it is a bit. Well, yeah. There are still some crazy things about the IVA test, because once you've passed it, you can do whatever the hell you want with the car. You can take you can swap the engine. You can put some big wings on it. You got to be sensible about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, once you pass the IVA test, you've got that little certificate. Do whatever you want. It's a bit, I don't know, it's a bit daft, but that's the way it is in the UK.
Over here, if you modify, you build it, you do your pictures, you go to inspections, and then later on, if you have a claim, if you've modified a whole bunch of stuff and it's not the same as what you originally put in, they just shake your hand and tell you you're on your own.
Yeah,
they won't settle with you.
Oh, they do that. They do that over here as well, even if you buy the book.
Yeah.
Or they try.
Yeah.
Rob, with regard to, we can't talk about hiccups and surprises. I mean, you could talk about all the hiccups and surprises you come up with when building yours, but in terms of instruction manual and that sort of thing, with regard to the LMR, what kind of advice do you have for your customers?
Well, we're still doing the build manual, because the one we're using is the original one that Stuart Mills did for the MEV, which is it's very basic, but it does give you the sort of lowdown on how to do it. We've made the chassis and the body now, so it's pretty Janet and John. The chassis bolts straight on. We've got 4 young kids. The 14-year-old girl bolted ours together. It dropped straight on. She put all the bolts in, did them all up, and the body will only fit in one place. It slides over the top. You push it back, it hits the bulkhead, and it hits the front bulkhead, and that's it. It's fixed. It's in position. Rivet it on.
Okay, you can't really get it wrong. You can't get it wrong. Yeah, basically.
Well, that's sort of the main bit. Fit the doors in before you rivet the sills in, so you don't pull them in too far. And the body's strong enough to sit there on its own.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. And
you got a question about the LMR, because someone said that I think it stands for Le Mans Racer, but then
Le Mans Racer
and the 141.
One donor for one race car. And the track of a Mazda is 141 centimeters on the front.
Oh, well, there you go.
Oh, that ties in as well then. Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Not my idea. That was one of my customers that came up with that. That was John Ham.
Well, oh yeah, I'd love to have him on the show
John,
one day. Yeah, it'd be great to get us all together with that. I mean, we would all love it, I'm sure. Trevor, going back into the distant past and talking about surprises, can you talk about Robin Hood and sort of the quirky things that you might have had to deal with?
You told me, Trevor, you told me a story once about you'd blown up the engine and you had to go out and get another donor car. I know you know the one I'm talking about. And do you want to just talk us through that?
I can't remember that. That might come to me in a minute. But going on, Robin Hood, I hear what Gary's saying about the early days of with the Stuart Mills era of instructions and so on. But unless you built a Robin Hood, you haven't had the Richard Stewart video experience, which is something else that, from some very quick highlights was things such as, I think it was a very early one where basically he showed you smash the tailgate glass and cut a bit out the side. And that's what you used to create the brace across the front to clip the bonnet to, which was always quite an interesting one. The other interesting ones were when he was trying to put something in and it wouldn't quite fit, and he started sort of clubbing it with a hammer, and then all of a sudden it would cut, and then it would show the part fitted, and he said it just needs a little bit of adjustment. And
like Peter style. Here's what I made earlier. Yeah,
exactly. And I think the other classic was when I only ever rang him once. So the rest of it, I got, like others have mentioned, off groups and so on. But for those of you aware of the Sera, it's got quite a big backbone subframe at the back that carries the rear trailing arms and the diff and drive shafts and so on. And when you put it in, like the holes that it mounts into are a bit large for the purpose, so it gives you a bit of slack there. And it didn't land against the mounting plate for the back of the diff. I expected it to, so I got on the phone, and cut a long story short, it was basically wherever it lands, drill a hole and bolt it in.
Pretty much.
That was it. But yeah,
the early days of kit cars is an amazing Wild West.
Yeah, if you want to, Wild West is pretty good, because if you want to have a giggle, I think they're all on YouTube now, and I think there was something like 12 hours of video.
There was one. I mean, I did a little piece on Robin Hood, and there is one where there's one where his dog just walks across.
Oh, there's several of that.
He says to his dog, "Do you want to give us a hand?" And then there's another. Then it bizarrely, and he was making the bonnet, I think it was, and then it bizarrely cut to how he was fitting the seats. And he says, "Well, the original seats are a bit of a tight fit." He said, "So what you need is," and he literally said, "What you need is a hammer." He said, "I use this 8-pound hammer," and he starts hammering the side of the car. It then goes over to a seat, the old Sera seat. He turns it on his side. He said, "Some of these bolts here for the recliner might stick out a bit," and he just starts hammering them like this. And he said, "There we go. It's all finished, and it fits nicely." And it was just absolutely.
Well, it's just amazing, guys. I've got to thank you. These things always go off the rails, and they always go. We had a tight time frame. We said we're going to keep it under an hour this time, and here we are, an hour and 3 minutes, and we've kind of touched on literally everything that we have. How did it turn out based on what you expected? What about the money? We talked about that. Plans and instructions, surprises. We got it covered. So, guys, I want to say thank you to each and every one of you. Rob Goddard, Mike Rupp, Mike Machen. Rob, thank you so much for showing up. You're just great. Trevor from Oscar's Garage, and Gary Tortoff, and of course, John and Minion. Thank you so much for being with us today.
No problem. Thanks, guys. It's been brilliant.
Good talking to you guys.
All right, before we go, I'd like to ask everyone at home, before we go, do you have a build plan? Will your MX5 be based on the classic donor or a low-cost space frame? Are you thinking of a spaceport kit, which is kind of an interesting thing for us guys in North America, because I think our options are basically a MEV, and that's about it. And how about, are you thinking of an exo style, or do you like the fantastic plastic body shell? Because that is so cool. I just am just so crazed about that idea. So what are your thoughts? Leave us a note in the comments, and we will see you guys at SevenSpot.
Okay. Take it easy, guys.
Everybody. Yeah.
Bye.
Cheers, everybody, and thanks again.
Yes.